I remembered. Seems like 100 years ago now. Something I read in high school. It was a line that stuck with me. Line written by a guy named Josh Billings. Went something like this. In the whole history of the world, there is but one thing that money cannot buy. To wit, the wag of a dog's tail. And so it was that I came to appreciate my new companion. Dogs seemed to have a good sense about them, if they'd been treated well. And that I did. I treated her well because she wasn't just my best friend, she was my only friend. On the days when the sun did shine, it was low in the sky, which meant that my new friend's shadow would creep up past me sometimes as she followed along behind. Watching her shadow bounce along in front of me gave me hope, because once a dog trusts you, they will be loyal for life. I turned around and looked her in the eye. She tilted her head and I said, "How's about it, Shadow?" She tilted her head the other way, and she seemed pleased. And so was I. As the sun was setting on the final day of summer, I took the opportunity to take stock of my foodstuffs. Reckon if I had cooked up all my rice, I'd have right around 20 meals. Those 20 meals would last me the better part of 2/3 of the fall. But then I'd have the last third and an entire winter to get through on absolutely nothing. The weather was about to get so cold that no animal would dare wander through this environment for quite some time. There was only one thing I could do about this. I had to take action, and I had to take action now. Only things I could see was a caribou in the not too distant fields. That, and one single snow hare all the way across on the other side of these parts, down near those Labradors as they wandered off. Reckon it would take me so much effort to get that snow hare and come back, I'd probably lose calories in the process. That is the concern when you're surviving in the winter. How many calories are you gonna spend, or how many calories are you gonna get back from whatever it is you might be killing? So instead, I set about to kill the caribou, and while wandering over there, I thought to myself, why don't I lay out a bit of bait? Get that snow hare to come to me, so I don't have to go to it. Then I maybe kill it while it wasn't paying attention. Butcher it up clean and proper, get a little bit of extra meat. In the process of doing that, I had noticed there were several berry bushes nearby. So I thought I'd harvest what little I could from them. Also grab what I could from the nearby fields. There was a fair bit of heel root in the environment. Figured I'd set my eyes on harvesting whatever was fully grown for the winter. Hopefully with a little bit of luck, leaving those berries outside, maybe, just maybe, that snow hare would come by here before deciding to move on south for the winter. As I was going about my chores, a couple of Ibex wandered in. My fear for the winters were a little bit unfounded. Hopefully, Ibex liked berries, and they'd be bringing themselves right up to eat 'em, near my carefully laid trap. And by carefully laid trap, I meant, most likely, I was just gonna shoot 'em in the back. Realizing that I was wasting quite a bit of meat just butchering on the ground, the next course of action seemed clear. I was going to build a right and proper steel butcher's table. This would take quite a bit of wood from what little reserves I had, but it would be necessary in order to use what little meat I can get efficiently, before there was none to be had for the rest of the season. While hauling the caribou back, I realized that Shadow needs a place to sleep. So I told her, "You go sleep right next to my bed, Shadow. That'll keep you warm." As the fall had rung in on the 1st of September, 5500, it was already well below freezing. I chopped up what plants I could, because they were going to freeze within the next day or two for sure. It was getting cold, and the snow was piling up. I was trying to get what little herbal meds and berries I had harvested back to our stockpile. Nothing but snow hares, and even then, only a handful of them. The ground was white, permafrost, probably 10 feet thick, like it was 1,000,000 years ago. And it was going to stay that way for a long time to come. Sure was difficult to trek across this snow. Hard to see, harder to move, hard to get one leg in front of the other. I was going to have to endeavor to not stray far from my abode, should I want to make any opportunistic use of what little daylight hours I had. With my new steel butcher's table put together, I had solved one problem. We would make much better use of our meats, what little we could get. However, when an old problem is solved, a new problem is born, as the saying goes. Inside, even though it wasn't a particularly cold day, it was not staying anywhere near warm enough, and I was going to have to double insulate these walls to keep what minuscule amounts of heat we had from the steam geyser. In my estimation, it was going to get as cold as negative 51 degrees Fahrenheit, which was negative 46 degrees Celsius. Not a pleasant place to be at all. Wasn't enough steel to double down on those walls. In fact, there wasn't enough marble either if I wanted to put the floors in. Though the floors would do me a bit of brain comfort, the walls would do quite a bit more comfort than that, keeping us warm all winter long. So I set about building a marble wall all the way around the outer steel wall of our new abode. Hopefully, this would keep the heat in and keep the raiders out, though I sure was getting antsy about them raiders. In my first summer here, I had been attacked numerous times, and I'm sure they were coming back. I was hoping to have some defenses made, but if the cold don't get you, the raiders will. And if the raiders don't get you, the starvation will. One way or another, you can't prepare for everything. You just gotta do the best with what little you have. While I was sleeping, Snowhair had the audacity, if you can believe it, to run directly into my stores and eat up my rice. Little did he know, that's exactly what I was waiting for. As he gobbled down all that rice, happy as a clam, I came in and grabbed my stabby, ready to put him directly into my food stockpile. Lo and behold, I did exactly that. Did get a bit of a scratch, didn't factor I needed no herbal meds, and that I would save on to him for later. Probably should have bothered to shut the doors, that the Snowhair couldn't have wandered right in whenever he wanted to, but that was going to require a little bit more stockpile management. As it would happen, I had stuffed that storage place full. We're going to need to move those leathers out of there. Not that I wanted to see them in the corner of my room. They weren't the most sightly of things. But at least being able to shut the door to my stockpiles would be an idea. And wouldn't you know it, as I was getting this all taken care of, another Snowhair came over here with the very same idea. Maybe after all it was a smart idea, being the clumsy futzabout that I am, leaving a bunch of meat in the doorway blocking it from shutting, because now I had easy access to all the Snowhairs I could find. Of course, weren't many to find, so it didn't do very much for me. Didn't even have a chance to get a proper meal in my belly before yet another Snowhair came a-charging. Wasn't as easy as putting down the first two, though. Hard hitting a dancing snow hare with a shiv when you got nothing in your belly. While going to pick up some marble blocks, I had a stroke of luck. I had spotted a couple of ibex nearby. I would hunt them as fast as I could before they decided to leave due to the inhospitable temperatures and move on to more greener pastures. Hopefully, this is just what I needed for me and Shadow to survive the winter. Those snow hares, while a tasty treat, would definitely not be enough to satiate the both of us straight through to the spring. But the ibex, however, God willing, they'd keep us both filled, and they'd keep us both warm. Maybe I could even craft a nice comfy bed for Shadow out of their hides. Wasn't much of a problem putting down both those ibex, though they weren't nearly as meaty as a caribou. Even learned a thing or two shooting while I was out there. Reckon the average ibex had approximately 40% of the meat of a caribou. But 40% is more than zero. When my arrow finally did hit, it was -6 and getting colder. Sun hadn't even gone down yet. To my surprise, when I hauled back that ibex, I had found another one right in my stores. They did indeed come to eat my rice, gorging their bellies completely full. They got it in their mind that they'd just take a nap right in my stockpile, and I figured, all right, all the easier for 'em. Oh boy, that might not have been the smartest thing I've ever done, though, to be fair. Risk putting that ibex into an enraged state. Let me tell you, those antlers are nothing a human wants to mess with. Bred from birth, ram each other in the head to establish dominance. You don't want to see yourself in the face of an ibex when he's on full masculinity mode. Though, as is the case with most things on this strange planet, it just didn't have no brains in that head. Probably because it was all filled with antlers. So he walked right by me casually and just allowed me the courtesy, keeping our stockpiles high. Very likely the last animal or person I was going to see for quite some time. Though, as luck would have it, I was completely wrong. I had been preparing as much as one can prepare, and just then a caravan had showed up. A combat supplier, coming in with a strange buffalo-looking creature. They were quite a sizable bunch, and if they wanted me dead, there wasn't a thing I could have done about it. Fortunately, they seemed to be a bit peaceful, as were their docile creatures hauling all their components and doohickeys and whatnot. At the same time, a bunch of cargo pods had crashed near them, dropping some sci-fi tea on the ground. Strange that cargo pods would have crashed right at that caravan's location as it was coming up, but I reckon it wasn't worth the time to trek all across the snow to get that tea. I just have to deal without it. And at that very moment, I heard the stomping hooves of what sounded like the final ibex anywhere in my locale. He was coming in. He had taken the bait, and I was looking to increase my stockpiles. Right for the berries he went. So hungry he didn't even flinch while he was bleeding out on the ground. But with one more arrow, he was down. Didn't even manage to get those berries fully chewed. Though the thought of eating partially chewed berries from an ibex might not be the most tasty thing for some, for me, it was a joyous day. I had honed my skills, I had gathered some meat, and I was getting prepared for the winter. Only one thing left to do as a studious man of intellect, and that's sharpen his brain. I didn't want to have the same fate befall me that felled all these creatures right next to me in that there stockpile. No brains running into dumb traps getting themselves killed. I wasn't gonna let that happen to me. I would sharpen my playing skills, playing against myself in chess. There ain't no greater opponent than yourself in chess, especially if you're a dummy. Combat Supplier had all manner of things I was interested in. They had an armor, they had helmets, they had smoke pop belts, and they had some newfangled future weapons. They even had a sniper rifle. Boy, what I wouldn't give for that. Even spied some fine medicines amongst their wares. Unfortunately, they had no interest whatsoever in the basic primitive belongings of a survivalist man like myself, and as such, I bid them farewell. As I was constructing my walls all by myself, sitting here not wanting to butcher up what few Ibex I had because I couldn't find any place to store their chopped meats, Caravan decided to leave me a gift. They left me a bird skin cowboy hat. Mighty nice of those friends. They also left me a wooden war mask. Reckon they thought I might want to use that to fight some local pirates on their behalf or whatnot. Maybe they themselves were fighting pirates. Maybe they just wanted me to go sacrifice myself so they didn't have to see this creation I was making on the side of their nice seaside landscape. No one can really say for sure. But I'll say I will not turn down a birdskin cowboy hat any day of the week. Though not nearly as warm as my toque, it sure did have quite a bit more style. It also had quite a bit more protection, and I was fine with that as long as it didn't get too cold for myself. Soon it would be time to finish up these walls, get this insulation going on, and then craft a duster, both for warmth and also for protection. After that, I was just hoping I could get some defenses up. Unfortunately, that birdskin cowboy hat was not a gift given with the purest of intention. It had seemed those traitors had more nefarious plots in mind, as after I put it on, I fell ill from an ancient disease that had been all but eradicated hundreds of years ago back on Earth. This sort of treacherous cowardice is something I had only read about in history books of ancient America. I had to hope that whatever remedy I could concoct with the local herbal plants I had gathered might help to keep the disease at bay. I didn't have the steadiest of hands, as would be expected for a man in my condition, but after a hasty self-tending, I would set straight to bed. It's a grim situation when you're all alone, and you're cold, and you've got the plague, and there's no one to tend for you or to care for you. Who I thought were my friends had given me a tainted birdskin cowboy hat, something they knew I couldn't resist. It was just too fancy for a man like me. They knew it, and they used it to their advantage to see me to my demise. The Republican Coalition of Haranathium, I recall their name being. How would I ever forget? I'm sure I'd see them again, and when I did, I was gonna set 'em straight. On this world, there ain't no waiting for karma. The old saying, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind, don't apply here. I was gonna set them straight. I woke up in a mighty stupor, feeling I needed another treatment for that plague, and I was about to apply it when I saw there was a bunch of dead bunnies all over the place. Had I done that without memory of the affair? Had Shadow taken to keeping our supplies up while my eyelids were down? What was this plague doing to my mind? My treatment was not of the best quality, but I was still able to stand. Though it was negative 10 degrees outside, negative 24 Celsius, inside was just the right temperature. Little on the cold, but just enough to keep from freezing. Shadow wouldn't leave my side until I was recovered, and recovered, I intended to get. And out of nowhere, wouldn't you know it, while I could barely keep my conscience, looks like a local timber wolf had pity on us. That, or maybe he sensed our despair, or maybe he even just had his eyes set on Shadow. Either which way, out of nowhere, that timber wolf had taken a liking to us and comfied right up into our abode. Not that I was going to complain, as a timber wolf was a mighty fine creature. Having slept for what felt like ages, I awoken to being fully healed. I could feel myself fully recovered from the plague, and it was time to give this timber wolf a name. I looked her up and down, and almost immediately I noticed a unique colored marking on her back legs. Looked a little bit like a cinnamon color to me, and so it was settled, without much thought wasted. Later on, I was prepping some rabbit for Shadow and Cinnamon, and it did occur to me to prolong our stores by telling them both to go eat the corpses outside. They wouldn't know the difference between the corpse of a rabbit and the corpse of a dead pirate, so I told them to do exactly that and otherwise stay inside where it was warm. To the south, much to my surprise, there was a whole herd of elk that had come through. I wondered how long they'd stick around given the current temperatures, though. And for once, those cold temperatures were actually a boon when some cargo pods crashed nearby with fresh eggs on board. Cold keeping them from spoiling till I could go find the time to gather them up. Shadow and Cinnamon were in for a treat tonight. I had run out of wood in the fueled stove. I believe 40 or 50 wood is what I had put into it, and it lasted all of maybe one season. We were going to need a lot more, as we couldn't cook until we found some. As such, I would have to chop the handful of trees that were nearby, and that was what we were going to have to last us all the way until spring. Though with it getting down to negative 35 Fahrenheit, negative 37 Celsius, I could feel the frostbite setting in. This was not the best time for my mental state to deteriorate. But alas, when you fear losing your fingers just from the nail-biting cold of being outside for more than 2 seconds, you really cannot expect to maintain control of your mind. Fortunately, even in my dumbest senses, I had the good sense to wander inside. Sometimes it seems that common sense don't have nothing to do with being smart or dumb. Realizing how cold it was outside, I had only one option, and that was to make myself that blue fur duster. It would definitely keep me warm, though at the same time, I probably wanted to make that duster in a clean environment. So I set about cleaning, and then I set about crafting. It would take mighty a while for someone like me who lacks crafting skill to stitch together patches of blue fur into what might resemble a duster. Though with a little bit of time and a little bit of luck, we'd get her done. Then we could get out there and harvest those trees with a little bit more safety than before. And with that, I had crafted my very first duster. It was of awful quality, weren't much to look at, but it was absolutely quite the comfort, insulating against quite a bit of that cold temperature. Not the most extreme insulation one could make, but more than before nonetheless. Just then, I heard a bunch of smashing outside. Sounded like an angry elk on the prowl. As far as I could concern myself, that was just a free meal waiting to happen. After a brief respite, I would see that elk got a proper handling. Now, elk aren't the fastest creatures in the world. They ain't slow either, but they aren't all that fast. Generally, you can outrun one, long as you make sure to put an arrow straight into its face first. Then again, there's not many things you can outrun if you put an arrow straight into their face before you start outrunning them. Some while later, after making a fool of me and headbutting me as punishment for mocking his speed, that elk done just got up and walked off. It truly was a mad elk, and there was nothing else to say about it. Temperatures had fallen to negative 43 Fahrenheit, negative 42 Celsius, and it was not warm inside. I would need to get those insulating walls finished straight away. Before I could take my hammer to stone, a lone man hunting alpha beaver had got it in his mind that human tastes better than trees. Now let me tell you something a little bit about alpha beavers. They're a mighty bit slow. They're not that big. They just have little paddle feet. They waddle left, they waddle right. Anyone can outrun them. Even better than elk, some might say. Though shooting them was quite a bit harder given their small stature and also their propensity to waddle back and forth like a one-footed penguin. I had spotted an opportunity. The beaver went to have a snack on one lone branch I left nearby. I was going to make the most of this opportunity, and that indeed I did. One shot into its eye. It couldn't see clear anymore, starving as it was. Second shot was right through the lung. It was struggling to move at this point, and my third arrow put it down for good. Straight through the brains. I had diced its brains, though one wonders if that might have been an improvement, given that it was trying to eat human instead of trees in the first place. And so I set about tidying up the blood of these recent mad animal invaders. What could have caused multiple animals of varying types to go mad in such a short period of time, I wondered. It didn't take long to get my answer. A toxic cloud of unknown origins had blown in from the south. This was not to be the beautiful white winter that I had imagined. But instead, a polluted and frozen avocado wasteland. Cinnamon seemed to have a reaction to the fallout, contracting the flu almost momentarily after the clouds swept in. I believed I could keep her alive while conserving our stockpile of herbal meds, so I attended to her affliction by hand. Just punch the sickness straight out of her, I said. She was a tough little pup. She could handle it. And at the same exact time, I heard the hideous squeals of that mad beaver's friends not too far away. Why on earth these beavers were wandering around in negative 48 degree Fahrenheit, negative 44 degrees Celsius frozen tundra, with very little trees in the toxic fallout, I will never know. Made me wonder about my home planet, about how someone once told me that Canada was built on dead beavers. Temperature had fallen to extremes, and I was utterly unable to get warm. There were too many distractions to get my walls done, and so I had but one thing I could do. I had to place a fire. Despite our extremely low stores of wood and the presence of ravenous beavers nearby eating all our trees, frostbite had latched onto my nose. At this point, I was hoping I could even make it back at all. I didn't want to lose my nose, and I didn't want to die out here. Who would tend to cinnamon in shadow, I thought, as I trudged through several feet of snow, making it a challenge to move in any single direction. I lit the match, blew on the kindling as it cracked. I could tell it was wet by the thick smoke. A tiny flame flickered to life for an instant, and died. I had failed. If you've never tried to start a fire in the freezing temperatures as you're about to die, I'll tell you, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. There were a few pieces of wood nearby, and that was just enough to try again. But as I felt the consciousness slipping away, I knew that I could not fail this again, or this was the end. One fire, 3 lives. Never before have I been so close to death's door, 1 foot over the threshold and one hand trembling desperately, trying to keep the lights from going out. Success. But winter hadn't even started yet. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. Please let me know what you think about this episode in the comments down below. It took a asinine amount of time to produce it. I really enjoyed doing it. I'd like to keep doing it, but it is almost a full-time job to make one of these a week. Maybe I can increase the efficiency in the future, but if you want to help me make more, you can always hit the like button, which helps to promote the series. And of course, there's the Patreon link if you have any extra cash to spare. I would love to hire a script editor. Boy, let me tell you. And lastly, thank you very much to everyone who submitted for the giveaway. And congratulations to Kugler Kevin for winning it.